having a really difficult time making words work today, so please excuse me. Hey guys, welcome back. We are here to talk about some of my favorite childhood books. Some of these are books that, a lot of these books, I don't remember exactly what they're about. I just remember either reading them over and over or just kind of holding them on this pedestal for whatever reason because so there won't really be any explanations as to what these books are about unless I can remember certain details. I might share those. Yeah, I just wanted to share these. Most of these books are books that I have personally read. A couple on here that I only discovered when my children were little. And some of these books are just incredibly precious. There's one book on here that I don't recall reading. Maybe it was read to me when I was really little. But it's just incredibly precious to me because I've had it for so long. This box set of The World of Pooh. This has The World of Christopher Robin and The World of Pooh. My grandmother used to live in Texas. She's passed away now several years ago. I lived in California and I would go visit her a lot and I would spend like summers with her. And I even for a little while there, my mom was going through some stuff. So I even lived with her for quite a while and I had my own room at her house and she had this like little wicker, and you know how grandmas are, like it was very ultra girly, floral bed sheets and frilly lace coverlet things on the pillowcases and stuff. She had this little wicker bookshelf in there, and this sat on there with a lot of other books. It sat on there just like for my whole life as far as I could remember. Weirdly enough, as I started looking into this, apparently this set of books was gifted to, I thought it was my grandma's, but it apparently was gifted to me from my uncle, that he left a message inside the front page of this book that says, "To Michelle from your Uncle Chris." Mad about Madeline. And in here it says, "To Michelle, Christmas 1993. That is a message from my mom. So my mom gifted this to me when I was little. Interesting illustrations. I can't say it's my favorite, but I really did love these stories. I loved, "In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines in rain or shine. The smallest one, Miss Madeline." Yeah, so I can't remember if this is like a school, a boarding school, or if this is an orphanage. I really can't remember. But this is a really fun book. My mom gave it to me because I was always really into art, and my mom was really into stamping, and so she had all the little, ink pads and stuff, so we'd like stick our fingers in the ink pads and like make marks with our fingers. And she found this book. It's called The Great Thumbprint Drawing Book, and it has like how-tos, like how to make all of these little caricatures and how to draw them from your thumbprints. So we have, and all the little animals. And isn't that funny? If they were yellow, they'd be minions. How funny is that? Maybe that's where the creator got his idea, because they look right in the front cover. You see that? It's a stamp. It's like a "This Belongs To" stamp. My mom started stamping all of our books with those little insignias and putting our names in them. And I think that's just such a cool detail. I always forget to do that with my books. Like, I definitely should go through my books and find some way to mark them as mine. Probably not all of the ones if I plan on getting rid of them, but I'm not gonna lie, when I buy used books, I love seeing when there's like notes written to the recipient, like if it was a gift. And I think it's kind of cool because I know that someone thought of that person to gift it to them. Anyways, this one is called "If You're Afraid of the Dark, Remember the Night Rainbow," and it is like a super artistic book. And here's the back. And just the artistic style just really speaks to me because it's kind of like hodgepodge. It's messy, it's dreamy, and I find that I'm really drawn to that in a lot of other things as well, like medias. And yeah, I can't tell you what this is about. It's kind of more like a poem. I want to say it's kind of more poetic. There is that. Then there is this little one, Gorilla. It's a little bit shiny. Gorilla. Okay, so apparently it's about this little girl and she loves gorillas. She reads about these gorillas and she, in the beginning of the book, she's trying to get like her dad's attention, but he's just always too busy for her. And then she ends up somehow befriending this gorilla. I don't know if he like comes out of her book or he just shows up at her house one day and then they become friends and it kind of fills that loneliness for her. Or maybe it's also like an allegory, or what do they call it? An allegory? I don't know if that's the right word for how like reading about gorillas fills that empty, lonely space for her. Kind of like how we escape with our books that we love to read. Anyways, really cute, precious little sweet book and gorgeous illustrations. Again, just beautiful illustrations. So, yeah. This is kind of a placeholder for the originals, but the Shel Silverstein books. Shel Silverstein poetry books are amazing. Where the Sidewalk Ends is the one that is my favorite, close to my heart. Then there is Falling Up that I had acquired sometime later in life. And then somehow or another, I lost those books in different moves. I swear I had them both in Colorado. And then I feel like maybe I lost one when I got to Florida, and now I didn't have them. I have this one, everything on it. And I should probably keep my eye out for the other two Shel Silverstein books. I remember reading from Falling Up to my son Aaron when I got it, and he loved it. He was laughing so hard. Yeah, that was really cool. So he loves these as much as I do. A spider lives inside my head, who weaves a strange and wondrous web of silken threads and silver strings to catch all sorts of flying things, like crumbs of thought and bits of smiles and specks of dried up tears and dust of dreams that catch and cling for years and years and years. Yeah, so good. Then we have these other two that I remember being favorites, reading them when I was little, but I escaped into my adulthood without them, and I recently found these and decided to add them to my collection. So these are not the actual books, they are, again, placeholders. And then we have The Tale of Peter Rabbit and The Velveteen Rabbit. Okay, so now we're going to get into some other books kind of from the same like very young childhood books that I remember reading, and then we'll move on to maybe more like a little bit older generation, like a little bit older chapter books. So let's start with those. We have Wind in the Willows. I do have a copy. We have Wind in the Willows. This is not the pretty cute children's book copy. I was a little confused when I picked this up because I was like, I thought that was a children's book, but this cover does not look like it's supposed to be a children's book. But it is like, I don't know, it's not written like a children's book. Either way, I don't recall reading these books. I know they were read to me at some point, but I can't really remember them. So also one other thing that I got from my grandma's house is this little guy. He was sitting on the shelf for the same, like as long as I could possibly remember. And there were other little trinkets and things. I had gotten some of them, but I didn't get all of them. But I'm really glad that I brought this guy home. This is obviously Mole from okay, the next one is Alexander and the Terrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. This is so funny. Then there is The Napping House, and this is a weird one, because I remember this one vividly, but I can't remember if I read it when I was a kid or if I read it just to my kids when I was a kid. I actually think it's more the second one. I think that actually someone gave us a little board book of this book. And then when my kids outgrew it, I obviously got rid of the book. But this is actually really cute. Where the Wild Things Are. And I actually have a copy of this. I kind of feel like my son took it with him up to his room, which is fine. It is a kid's book. I actually have been trying to like clear off some space from my shelves and any of the like kids books and chapter books, like middle grade books. I'm like moving up to my son's room. So I have more space down here. But anyways, there is Where the Wild Things Are. Such a good book. I definitely need to like kind of read this one. Then there is Frog and Toad Are Friends. Oh, I love this one. I love their friendship. We're going to talk about themes here in a minute, and that's going to come up. Then we have The Little House. And I remember this book kind of being really in a sad, because it's basically just about this little house. Or is that Little House in the Big City? Am I getting this mixed up? What I remember, I might have this wrong, but I thought that this book, The Little House, is about this little house in the country, and then as time passes, people start moving in, they start building houses around them, and before you know it, this little house is just standing alone next to these like towering apartment buildings or something, and it's actually really sad. It's sad to me. I think it was really sad. But I can't remember. Then we have Chrysanthemum. I don't remember anything about this book, but I know I loved this book. Then we have Little Bear. I thought it was cute. Then we have If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. This one's just incredibly funny. And then Corduroy. Oh gosh, Corduroy. I actually had a copy of this at my grandma's house too, but I left it there. It just didn't seem like it was a rare collectible book or anything like that. But I kind of regret not taking a few more items because they just got sold off in an estate sale or whatever. It was such an emotional time when all that was going on too. It was like that was like kind of the last thing I was ever thinking about. So yeah. But anyways, there's Corduroy. This one, I forget. I remember that this one is about this little bear who's left in a mall, and then he like loses a button, and he finds a button on a mattress at the mall, and he's trying to remove it so that he could have it, and he can't get it free. But I remember there being like some really dark and sad theme going along, like maybe he was left behind, and that just seems like such a sad thing to me. If I'm remembering that correctly. Then we have Blueberries for Saul. Oh, this was so good. And I don't know exactly 100% why. It's like this little kid's running around collecting blueberries, and I think it was probably more or less like the atmosphere and the illustrations that I probably really loved about this. And then we have Miss Nelson is Missing. This one I remember being so funny. And also, like when you first meet Miss Nelson, she's like really scary and tough, and she's yelling and everyone's afraid of her, but then like she goes missing and they have to like find her. I don't remember, but this is definitely at the top of like one of my favorites. I remember really loving this one. And then we have Any of the Berenstein Bears. The one I had put on here is Berenstein Bears Go to School. But I remember reading a lot of the Berenstein Bears. And then there's Go Dog Go by P.D. Eastman. Oh, and also by this, there is that little book about the little bird who leaves the nest. Oh, it's Are You My Mother? I don't know why I love that one. Are You My Mother? And then Amelia Bedelia. I loved Amelia Bedelia. She is hilarious. She's this maid who's working at these people's house, and they leave a list for her to complete, and their instructions are kind of funny, and she like I remember her like reading over the list being like, well, that's a really strange request, but okay. And then she goes about doing it and she ends up messing everything up. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of like an example. I can't think of one, but it's just hilarious. It's chaos. I think maybe I kind of sort of identified with her because of how like she just seemed to not, like there was a communication thing, like she just did not understand what they were really trying, what they really meant. I don't know. Sometimes I guess I feel like that a lot. And then we have any of the Dr. Seuss books. Of course, I have Green Eggs and Ham that I have listed that I remember really liking. But I used to have Dr. Seuss's birthday book, and my mom had given that to me. I want to say it was probably like 4, 5, 6, around that age, and she again had written like to Michelle happy birthday in it and left the date, and I don't know where that book is. Again, I think it was lost in a move or something, because our Hats for Sale. This was a really funny book. I don't know why it's such a favorite. I just remember it's this guy walking along and he's like got like 100 hats, 10 stories high of hats, probably not that tall. And he's walking around like trying to sell his hats. There's something about this book that kind of reminded me of like my dad, which is kind of a weird thing. Maybe it's like the nature or the vibe of the story too. It kind of reminds me of this song that my dad used to sing, Jingleheimer Schmidt song. I don't know how those two things work together or why those things are linked in my mind, but they just are. Okay, now moving on to a little bit more chapter books, but still more early reading childhood chapter books, I would say. Deanie by Judy Blume. This book I just remember so vividly, just loving this book. It had always stuck with me. So I'm really glad. I actually recently found this copy because I want to go back and get reacquainted with these books that really spoke to me as a child. And I kind of want to see how that reflects in my reading today and the person that I am today. And we have The Little Prince. This is kind of a placeholder. I don't have a specific title in mind. This is more of an author by, and if you've been here a while, you know that I really like the more vintage, older covers of books, and that is a Beverly Cleary book. This is Ellen Tidbits. I don't recall this title in particular. I'm trying to think. Beverly Cleary wrote... Didn't she have like a whole series with like this girl and her little brother or something? Is it Super Fudge? I think I probably did read those. Like I said, I can't remember the exact titles, but Beverly Cleary's super popular author when I was growing up. I also just recently found this one. I was really excited, and that is the first one of the Boxcar Children series. I just can't remember what it is. I just remember... I don't even remember what these are about. I think they're actually orphans who run away and start living out of a boxcar on this train, like an abandoned boxcar train. I don't know if they start solving mysteries or what the deal is, but I think that's the premise. Then we have Goosebumps, and this is kind of a placeholder for all of them. I actually read a lot of the Goosebumps. I have quite a few more upstairs. I try to collect them when I see them, if I find them for a really good price, because I think they're upwards of like $5 or $6 a book. I'm like, do you know how many hundreds of books this is? This one's in pretty rough condition. I think I actually found this in maybe a little free library. But this is Create Your Own Story one. This is called The Deadly Experiments of Dr. Eek. And I just love the idea of how you can be reading along and then decide to go whichever direction, and then you can reread the book over and over and get a new experience. I remember my son Aaron actually did that with this book, and he kept telling me all the different ways, like oh, this time I read it and we did this, and then this time I read it and I chose this path and this is how it ended. So he really enjoyed that. And Babysitter's Club. And I don't know exactly how many of the actual books I read in this series, but I also very, very vividly remember watching the movie, and I loved the movie. I would watch it over and over again. But yeah, Babysitter's Club, really good. Sweet Valley High. I feel like I can't remember these too much. I feel like it was very like 90s cliche. You know, you have your popular girls and your cheerleaders and mean girl clicking and things like that. If I can recall, that's kind of the vibes from these books, but the Sweet Valley High, it felt like Hot Girl Summer. That's what it is. We haven't talked about Hot Girl Summer in a couple of years now. I remember that was really big a couple of years ago, where everyone was making their like Hot Girl Summer reading list, and I feel like that would fit. It felt really cool to read those books. Another one is Stone Words by Pam Conrad. I loved this book. This is one of those books, like, I think I read it around the same time I read Deanie. I remember I had moved to a new school. I had trips down to the library once a week so we could pick out a new book. I plucked this one off the shelf and just fell in love with it and had stuck with me ever since. I always knew that I wanted to be a mom since I was little. I'm gonna name my daughter Zoe if I have a girl. And Zoe is the little girl's ghost name, actually. But yeah, I was so into that book. I loved it. And then another one is The Borrowers. And this is another one that I can't remember if I actually read the book or if I just watched the movie. I know beyond a doubt I watched the movie. And I just love the story. I love the concept of these little small people kind of living in the floorboards and the walls of a house, like to regular size humans. And it's just this one little family. And I guess they do talk about how there used to be a lot more borrowers. They call themselves the borrowers because they like live in this house, and then things that are like dropped, if you dropped like a safety pin, they in the night or when the humans were gone, they would go and collect it and use it for whatever. Or like I think they use like a thimble for a pot to make their soup in or whatever. Like it's I love the creativity and the inventiveness and recycling the trash for treasure sorts of things, and just like I just love that concept so much from The Borrowers. So yeah, and I didn't realize it's a whole series. Apparently it is, and I need to read those books. I need to collect them. And actually at my buy-sell trade store that I go to, every time I go, I look at this book and I'm like, should I get it? It's just kind of expensive because it's almost $30, but it's a really old, like vintage edition, and I'm just like, I'm not necessarily into collecting like expensive first editions, you know, things like that. I just think I'm just not really into that, but I do like my older covers. I just really want to read the book. And I feel like if it's like a really old vintage edition, I'd be like afraid to read that book. Anyways, so The Borrowers. And then the last couple books are books that I didn't discover until my kids read them. And that is Wayside School is Falling Down. This is actually the second one. The first one's on my son's shelf. I left it upstairs. I grabbed the wrong one. But either way, this is part of the Wayside School is Falling Down. And they are hilarious. Like each chapter is kind of like a new character at the school, a different student at the school, and what kind of like shenanigans they get into. And I feel like they're so cleverly written and they're so funny. And my son would want to like read a book sometimes, and he enjoyed reading from the book, but then he'd like want to read something else, and I'm like, let's read Wayside School, and he's like, oh mom, like we already read those, I want to read this one. I'm like, okay, fine. And then the last one, again, I didn't discover these until I was older, and that is the Spiderwick Chronicles. I don't even know when these were published. Obviously probably later than 2003. Yeah, that'd explain it. I was like late in high school. I wasn't gonna go and find children's books in high school. The Spiderwick Chronicles. These are so incredible. They are beautiful little books. The illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. They feel dark and gothic. And I think that's just what is so drawn to me. I love the fine line, a little bit scratchy, messy pen and ink drawings. Yeah, plus the stories. I mean, they're just like, I just can't get over it. I just love pen and ink. What else was I gonna say about this? I also watched the movie, and the movie is so cool. That's that. Okay, so now that we've talked about all the books on this list, I kind of alluded to this earlier, that I wanted to kind of think about all of these books and draw up some comparisons to themes and aspects that I still love today. And I don't know how that works. What came first, chicken or the egg kind of situation. But I just wonder if my tastes today are because of the books that shaped my reading when I was younger. First and foremost, y'all know how much I love dark academia. Academic. It doesn't even have to be dark academia. It just has to be academic. Place settings, themes, things like that. Gothic settings. I guess we can kind of put those things together because a lot of times they kind of coincide. And Gothic settings are also where they usually have a house or a place. And I think that's why the academia and gothic settings kind of go hand in hand, because whether it's a house or school, either way, it's kind of the central place setting, a central focus. It's like its own character sometimes. It's very integral to the plot and the storyline in both of those settings. And I think dark academia is kind of like a subset genre of gothic. I think that's how it works. There's quite a few books on this list that have that theme. And I guess Goosebumps kind of fits into that, because while not all of the stories, I guess, take place within a school, a lot of times it is school children. But Goosebumps kind of fits into that as well, because there are a lot of dark themes going on in this as well. This is kind of loosely related. Maybe not. Maybe it's a little bit more close related, but that is Boxcar Children, because obviously the title is called The Boxcar Children. So that place, the setting, the boxcar is their home. It is the setting for these stories. Deanie. I believe that this is mostly takes place at their school, because that's the only way these two girls get to know each other, is because they go to school together. I remember that there's this one scene where they're in the school bathroom, and it's kind of where their stories collide, and also dark themes within that story. Spiderwick Chronicles takes place at their house, which is this really large, kind of gothic-y mansion, and it's such a cool setting. So there's more of the gothic side, plus dark themes with monsters and trolls and supernatural things. Wayside School is Falling Down, obviously a school setting. Mad About Madeline. As I said, I don't know if this is like a home or a school or an orphanage. Either way, there is this house is a huge setting of the stories. They always start out every single story like at their house, either waking up or going to bed. Then there is Sweet Valley High. Obviously, it takes place at their high school. Stone Words has like a ghost story in this place setting of this house. It was a huge part of this. It's kind of like a gateway in a way as well, because we have this human girl and this ghost, and in the backyard where they first meet, there's like a little playhouse, and then as time goes on, they kind of take their shenanigans into the main house, and at one time she's trying to find out where Zoe goes. She goes through this closet and up the stairs, and she's gone. She disappears. And our human girl is always trying to like chase her down to figure out where she's going. It took her the longest time to even realize she was a ghost, until like she realized her grandparents never saw who she was talking to or talking about. So that's kind of cool. But there is a part where she actually kind of follows Zoe through this stairwell, and kind of crosses over into the beyond. And so we got a lot of dark themes, and that place setting of the house is very integral to the story. Miss Nelson is Missing takes place at a school. Amelia Bedelia, while it's very funny, not really, it does take place in a house. The Borrowers, obviously huge about the setting of the house, and then the way that the items in the house are utilized and used as tools. So cool. And how these two people like share the space, and love it. The Little House, also obviously about a house. And I do think that there is a dark theme going on there, because if it's how I remember, it struck me as being really sad that all this land around this house is just gone, and it's crowded by these big towering, this little house just seems so peaceful, and now it's like crowded by the busy city street, and I don't like that. I think that's huge. Like, that's a huge portion of these books that all have these same themes that I still truly love today. That's so cool. And then the other books are really interesting. The other theme that I'm seeing a lot of are nature. And one of the Goosebumps books I remember reading is Ghost Camp. I am a huge fan of camp settings, like campy settings. I just kind of sort of realized that because I have another video I'm going to be doing later today that's also like a summer camp setting. So I like outdoorsy and naturey stuff, adventure stuff too. Babysitter's Club. Now this is going based off of the movie because I don't quite remember the books. However, I believe Babysitter's Club, these kids were all like school friends and they all think they're all go to school together. But the movie is based off of the Babysitter's Club starting up a summer camp. And I just remember all the characters being so unique and different. Like there's an artsy character, and then there's like a more privy character who's very organized and a really smart character. And they all have something to bring to the table, and that's another. So as far as nature, we have Wind in the Willows, Where the Wild Things Are, Frog and Toad Are Friends, Peter Rabbit, Velveteen Rabbit. Those all kind of take place outdoors in nature. Also Chrysanthemum, Blueberries for Saul. Technically Go Dog Go as well, because they're always going places and doing things, but it's very adventurous. Friendships. I love friendship dynamics in books. Way more, like, unless it's really good romance, like even with my romances, I love to see that they're friends first. Friendship is so much more important to me, and I've noticed that probably even as I get older and older, I even cling to that so much more. If you have a long relationship, your relationships are only as good and as strong as your friendships are. So how well you connect to each other. Babysitter's Club. You have this huge friendship group, and I love how, like I said, all the characters are so different and work together as a team, how close they become, that sort of thing. Boxcar Children. We have these friend dynamic. Sweet Valley High. I can't really remember the vibes. As I said, I think it's very clicky, but I am a child of the 90s, and like it's so nostalgic for me. I'm not saying it's not problematic or anything like that, or there's its problems, and that I don't love that, especially for my kids, that we don't have these very strict like cliques anymore, and like groups that you have to, an aesthetic that you identify by. I think that was very huge in the 90s, which we're really straying away from that, which is really cool now. And I wish that was so when I was a kid, because it was really hard to fit in to one group or aesthetic when you feel like you're a very eclectic person and don't really fit into any of the groups. It makes you really feel like you don't belong anywhere growing up. Maybe that's why I love it so much, because it is like kind of personal to me. Maybe that is why I really am drawn to that concept still. But yeah, in the 90s it was like your cheerleaders, your punks, your like whatever, like there were very clearly defined rules for your groups. Goosebumps, I feel like there were always more than like one character as you're narrated. Like there was always like a group of kids that were being affected by whatever horrors and things like that, and like it was how well they like worked together to solve these little mysteries and things like that. Wind in the Willows, bunch of little animal friends. Most children's books are usually about friendships, obviously. Where the Wild Things Are, you have, monster friends. I love it. Frog and Toad Are Friends. I feel like it was these two, like one-on-one friendship that I really could identify with, because I was more that kid. I didn't necessarily fit in with a big group of people, but I would usually have like one really good friend. We weren't necessarily part of a group. It was just like the two of us. And I feel like that was just such an intimate relationship. And I was always drawn to that. And I fit better in that scenario. Sibling relationships, I guess. I like to see sibling and family dynamics more as an adult than I really remembered as a kid. And I don't know if that's just, I really do, scared me for a second. I think a lot of that is because of my relationship with my sister. My relationship with my mom was not always very close, but as I've gotten older, I've had a chance, and I have a very close-knit family now. Like my relationship with my husband and my kids, I feel that we're really close. So I think having those experiences, like seeing the difference, and I think growing up too, like seeing how other people's family dynamics were so different than mine, it became important to me over the years. And now it's something that I'm really drawn to, but it wasn't necessarily when I was a kid. I think friendships were more important to me as a kid. Like here again in Deanie, we have the friendship between the two girls who were really opposites as well. I think that was a friendship dynamic that I really was drawn to because the main character, I think she felt like she wanted to be liked by this girl that she thought was really pretty. And so when they became friends, that was really important to her. And that was kind of that dynamic of a one-on-one friendship that became really intimate to them. So there's that. Oh, yeah. Animal Friends, our girl's relationship with the gorilla as a friendship. That is really sweet. And it's kind of interesting. I can see why this book really touched me as a kid too, because she felt lonely and isolated as a child and then found that fulfillment through that friendship. So wow, I did not expect this to take me to darker places in my memories. This actually ended up being an incredibly surprising conversation and journey for myself. That was really cool. Oh my god. Okay, why can I not remember the Little Prince? Isn't there like a really sweet relationship dynamic in this too? One thing I think that I loved about this book is like his isolation. That is also something I find that I'm really drawn to in stories when I was little, when I was younger, and still as an adult, where our characters are, has some sort of isolation issue going on, loneliness, because it can be really touching and fulfilling when they cure their loneliness, I guess. Anyways, okay, I really hope that you enjoyed this. I really did not expect it to go the direction that it ended up going. So that was really interesting and fun, enlightening, I suppose. I'd like to know what some of your favorite childhood books are. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.